Hey guys, today I'm going to be showing you how to sharpen any knife very easily into a knife that's razor sharp and can easily pass the paper test. And I'm going to be showing you the laziest and most simple way to do it. It's going to take the least amount of time. As you can see, all of these knives have been sharpened up and it takes only about 2 minutes per knife once you've got it to decent sharpness. The way that I'm achieving this extreme sharpness is by using an MDF buffing wheel. Basically, I cut out a piece of MDF, charged it with some buffing compound, and then it works really well to power strop the knives, and it gives them a really polished edge, which is super sharp and really good for usable knives. So enjoy the video, and hopefully you'll be able to sharpen your knife as sharp as any of these. So I figured the easiest way to do it would to be take an old rubbish knife like this that is so blunt and horrible that I'm pretty sure I couldn't even cut my own skin, so it obviously cannot pass the paper test. Then what I'm going to be doing is showing you in this tutorial how I'm going to take this knife from being this blunt, absolutely terrible, to being as sharp as a knife like this. So without further ado, let's get started and see how I sharpen up a knife like this. First things first, I think I've really got to clean up this knife since I bought it a couple of years ago for only 50p at a car boot sale, and it's pretty rubbish, it's rusted and it just looks terrible. So I'm going to go over it with some fine sandpaper, wet and dry paper going all the way up to 2000 grit to try and make it look a little bit more acceptable. So now the knife looks a little bit better. I've sanded it up and got off most of the rust, and I've also smoothed out the handle a little bit and got out most of the scratches, but it is still hopelessly blunt. I still have no chance of cutting the paper no matter what I try and do. So now obviously it's time to sharpen it so I can actually use it for something. So the first step is going to be to take something like this. You could either use this or a small file. This is just a metal knife sharpener that's just for rough sharpening the knife. And as you can see, the blade has got a couple of little dents in and nicks coming out of the blade. So what you want to do is you want to take something like this. You want to put it at a very shallow angle and just slowly start to get rid of all of these dents. And make sure that it flattens into a nice, even, smooth blade. So now what I have is a much smoother edge after using this little file thing. You could also just use a whetstone if you had one, and I do have one, but I prefer not to use it since I'm not very good with it. And now the knife has much more chance of cutting the paper. It's still very blunt and not very useful, but it's almost usable at the moment. So the next step with what I would usually do would to be take a piece of leather like this, put buffing compound on it and start to strop the burr off the edge of the knife, and keep on doing this for probably about half an hour until the blade becomes really shiny and super mega razor sharp. But I'm actually going to try a new way of doing this. So what I'm going to try and do is I'm going to try and make a buffing wheel out of MDF. This is going to be very similar to the razor sharp buffing wheels which you can buy made of paper, and then I'm going to charge it with buffing compound and use it to power strop the knife. The idea for making this buffing wheel came from a video done by John Heiss where he made an MDF buffing wheel. I think it was quite a long time ago, but the video will still be linked in the description box down below. For cutting out the MDF buffing wheel, I'm going to be using my CNC machine sent to me by Inventables, which is the X-Carve, and this is the most simple way that I can do it, since I can basically just draw on a circle on the computer, it'll cut it out and it'll be a perfect circle with a hole perfectly in the middle. Of course, a £1,500 CNC machine isn't the only thing that you would be able to use for this. You can simply use something like a hole saw set like this. A simple jigsaw if you just cut it out and then refine the shape and hope that it was circular. You can even use a cheap trim router if it comes with a circle cutting jig like this one did. So this is what it looks like when it comes out the CNC. It's a little bit rough around the edges, but that can easily be fixed, and it's exactly perfectly circular. Now it's time to attach your makeshift buffing wheel onto whatever you're going to be using to power it. I'm simply using this old bench grinder. And you can pretty much use whatever you want. You need to make sure whatever you use is pretty solid though, because as soon as you put this on, it's going to have a little bit of vibration. Another good thing that you could use would be an old lathe or something like that, but it's got to be something with a high RPM. On top of this, you could use a drill if you had a drill press or a high powered drill, and then you could clamp it in a vise or hold it down as long as you do it securely, and then put it on a high RPM and just hold the buffing wheel in with a strong bolt. So I've now got it attached and it seems to be pretty on target and it seems to be spinning pretty well. Now I can turn it on, got all my safety glasses and stuff on in case something explodes. It actually seems to be working quite well. Now I'm going to try and use a metal file to true it up and make sure that it's perfectly circular. Now I can take some buffing compound. This is stuff that you normally put on the buffing wheel in order to polish up metal, and this has got very fine grains of abrasive in it, and this is what is going to sharpen the metal and erode it away. So I can spin up the knife, the buffing wheel, and start to charge it with the compound. Now I can simply strop the knife against the buffing wheel and it will sharpen it. Literally just after that 50 seconds of stropping that on the buffing wheel, it's surprising, but it's actually made this knife so sharp that it just destroys the paper test. And this is with no other modifications than literally what I have just done there. As you can see, the buffing wheel over there is still spinning after being used. And this knife is just ridiculously sharp now. It's also ridiculously sharp and good at cutting wood now. So a couple of people were also saying on my previous videos where I did the paper test that paper is pretty easy to cut and the knife doesn't have to be sharp, it just needs to not be blunt. So now I've got a piece of newspaper here which is apparently much harder. So since that worked so well for this knife, I've decided there's a couple more knives which I need to sharpen, and I'd really benefit from having all of these razor sharp, and since it takes so little time on this buffing wheel setup, I think I might as well just do it now. As an improvement for the buffing wheel, what I've decided to do is just take a little clamp it to the bench, and then clamp in a piece of wood and use it as a makeshift tool rest. I can then sort of use this bench vise as a mini lathe and use it to true up the wheel completely just using a chisel. I should have probably done this in the start instead of using sandpaper. So to prove that this system works all in one, I'm going to sharpen this knife in a single cut. So at the moment, it's pretty rubbish. This is just a Victorinox Swiss Army knife, and it's decently sharp. I mean, it'll cut wood, but it's not going to pass the paper test anytime soon. And so I need to start sharpening it up. So now I'm just going to sharpen it up, charging this with the buffing compound, and sharpening it all the way up. And that only took 1.5 minutes. I then used the buffing wheel to sharpen up all of the rest of the knives which I had on the table which I wanted to be sharp, and it honestly only took about 2 minutes per knife to get it from being really blunt to then all the way up to full sharpness. I also found it was easier to get the right angle on the blade if I turned around the bench grinder so it was facing and the wheel was spinning away from me. Therefore I could hold the knife up vertically next to my face instead of having to hold it down. Now all of these knives are just simply ridiculously sharp. They just slice through whatever you want and they're really good to use, really good for carving wood or cutting whatever you want to use them for. And if you do blunten them, it's pretty simple to just sharpen them up. All you need to do is take out whatever nick you've taken out of the blade just using something like this, then go back to the buffing wheel. So thanks for watching guys, really hope that you've enjoyed this video, and if you have, please hit the like button down below and subscribe. If you do try this, good luck, and hopefully your knife will soon be as sharp as any of these.